How do you know when it's time to end a relationship? Or maybe the relationship doesn't need to end, but something needs to change. How do you have that challenging conversation with somebody? And how could somebody have that conversation with you? What would be the way that you would best receive that information? How do you arrive at some kind of mutual understanding that you want different things? And how do you accept it's just time to move on? Hi, this is Sara Russell. I'm a relationship coach, dancer, and Taoist. In every episode, I'll be talking about psychedelics, well-being, or the human experience, and this one is on how to handle a breakup. So, in our culture, we define a successful relationship as one that lasts forever. So it's baked into our wedding vows, right? Till death do us part. A successful relationship is one where the reason why it ends is because one of you died. That's a successful relationship in our culture. And so we have all of this support culturally around how to keep a relationship together. We have self-help books, and we have incredible podcasters like Esther Perel, and you've got therapists and couples counselors, and me, right? I'm a relationship coach. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm helping people navigate their relationships. We don't have the same level of support for breakups. So think about it. Did you get taught in any way? Did you do any skill building? Have anybody guide you through how to have a dignified parting with dignified differences when you wanted to end a relationship? Probably not, right? You probably were just fumbling your way through. And so one of the things that actually differentiates the particular coaching that I do is when people come through my door and they say, hey, we need to navigate this relationship, I'm going to be taking care of the individuals first, because I don't have this cosmology that the relationship is the most important thing. So I'm not going to try to save the relationship before I'm trying to take care of the needs of the people in it. But that's pretty counterculture, because again, we have this idea that we're supposed to do everything we can in order to make that relationship work. And if you didn't do everything you can, there was a lack of love, there was a lack of commitment, there was a lack of care in some way. So there's also in all of this notion that we need a good enough reason to want to break up with somebody. And there are good reasons to want to break up with somebody. So the obvious ones are if there's physical or emotional abuse, or if trust has been broken, or the repair attempts just aren't working, if something has happened and you just can't move past it. Those are good reasons to want to end a relationship. But you also don't need a good reason to end a relationship. You can end a relationship because you want to. The end. And of course, if you're going to have an ongoing relationship with the person that's not like a romantic, sexual, intimate partnership, if you want to stay friends, for instance, and again, I'm using those terms, but as a relationship anarchist, I'm going to come back to that because this idea that sex is the most important thing in a relationship is already problematic for me. But for the sake of this conversation, let's say, for instance, you're going to stop having sex with somebody, but you're going to keep doing other things. You're probably going to want to have a reasonable conversation with them where you take care of their emotions and hear their concerns and come to some kind of agreement. But the thing is, you don't need to justify why you want to break up with somebody. So if you want to change your relationship, you get to change your relationship. And it could just be because you're at a different time in your life, or you've decided that you want different things. Maybe there's a mismatch. Maybe it's just not something that you want to be doing right then. So you don't need to justify your breakup. I really want to emphasize that. You can just leave because you want to leave. But most of us will stay longer than we want to stay because we feel like we don't have a good enough reason, or we feel like we haven't tried enough things. And so we're not taught when's a good time to leave. How do you know when you're ready to end a relationship or transition a relationship or de-escalate a relationship? Is it when you don't have enough overlapping interest? Is it when somebody's crossed too many of your boundaries? Is it when you feel like you need to be more independent and autonomous in your life, and organizing yourself around somebody else is feeling too restrictive? There are so many reasons, and they're all super personal, and you get to decide. You don't have to justify it to your partner. You don't have to justify it to your mom who wants you to be making babies with somebody. You get to decide when you would like to transition a relationship. Okay, now I want to come to this idea of what breaking up even means, right? Because this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying I'm a relationship anarchist. I don't break up with people unless there's something awful or bad that happened, right? So that physical or emotional abuse that I was talking about, or somebody has just proved that they're not trustworthy, or there's not enough mutual reciprocity in the relationship. They're not extending enough care or curiosity. those are reasons for me to break up with somebody. But otherwise, I'm probably just going to transition the relationship. So for instance, I might take sex off the table if we don't have a match as far as our safer sex practices or the amount of time and energy somebody wants to put into a sexual connection. So I might not be willing to have sex with you anymore, but we can still go on a hike. So figuring out, like, do you actually need to break up with somebody? Do you actually need to end something? Or do you just need to shift a lot of the pieces? So get rid of what's not working and then keep the pieces that are still working. So how do you know when it's time to transition something? Like I said, it may just be a mismatch of needs. Maybe you're super social and your partner is super introverted and you want to go out partying all the time and they want you home cuddling on the couch. Maybe you like to be super outdoorsy and your partner always wants to hang out at the mall. It could be a variety of reasons, right? Like, so whatever those mismatched needs are. If those differences become too substantial, the relationship probably needs to shift. And something else that would make a relationship need to shift is, again, we have this idea culturally that when we love somebody, they are special to us. And yes, that's true. Like the people that we love are special to us. But in that specialness, there's this idea that now we have to self-sacrifice in order to prove to the person that we love just how special they are to us. And so we start this act of like self-betrayal and self-sacrificing, where we start giving up what we want and giving up what we need and hiding and masking these parts of ourselves in order to prove to this other person how much we care about them. And that can breed a tremendous amount of resentment. And if you're doing that too much, are you actually in the relationship that you want to be in, or is it time to transition? The other thing is that if you are acting out your preferences, if you're going with full honesty and transparency and you're getting consent from your partner, as in like, I'm letting you know that this is what I want and need. That's what I mean by consent. I don't mean permission. But if you're being really clear about your desires and your preferences and your partner is persecuting you on the regular for those things, again, is this a relationship that you want to stay in if you can't show up as your best self because the other person is finding it too problematic for some reason? Which leads me to, I would say probably the number one reason why I end up transitioning a lot of my relationships is how much processing is happening in the relationship versus how much pleasure. So for me, the pleasure needs to far outweigh the processing. If we are stuck in talking about what's wrong with the relationship, what I'm doing wrong, what you're doing wrong, all of the things that aren't working, and that's happening way more than we're enjoying each other, I'm going to need to take a step back. I'm going to need to de-escalate or transition or shift something in some way because I want the majority of my relationship to be smooth and easy and relaxing or exciting or sexy or delightful in some way, because otherwise, why are we relating with each other? And yes, like the cauldron of relationships is this really sweet place for personal transformation. I don't want to discount that. And at the same time, as a culture, we really uplift processing. This idea of like, I have a feeling and I need to talk to you about it has become really normalized in the culture. But if that's happening more than the good stuff, I'm out. Like, not for me. You get to decide for you. Okay, so it's time to transition. We've decided like a move needs to be made. Something needs to happen. So that might mean limiting our time and energy together. That might mean changing the activities that we do together. And speaking of time, I want to disrupt this idea that time heals all wounds. This idea that if you just wait long enough, it's all going to be better. Time does have this very healing effect. Something that feels really acute and painful in the moment, months later, years later, is going to be more like, like a scar, right? Like it's healed over, it's still there, but it's not quite as painful as when it was this like bleeding wound, right? But if you don't focus on your healing, if you don't bring intentional awareness to it, what happens is all that pain roots down inside and starts festering, and it can then come out in really problematic, chaotic, dramatic ways later. So there's like this intensification process when you just bury it all down and go, well, I'm just not going to look at that. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm not going to deal with that right now. It can end up manifesting in these ways that are really just yuck, right? So yes, time is part of the healing process, but it's not the only part of the healing process. I want people to bring a lot of intentionality in what they need in order to move through a huge transition like a breakup. So really like turning towards yourself and asking yourself, what do you need in that moment? And part of what you need, I don't want it to be like an if then, like if this person, then I. So I don't want it to be dependent or contingent on what the other person is doing. So if you don't post pictures of your new partner on Instagram, then I'll be able to relax a little bit, is a power play, feels controlling, hierarchical. I don't like that kind of thing, right? So I'm not talking about that. And there's a quote from Andy Nordgren, my favorite, from the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto, and they say, "Our feelings for a person or your history together does not make you entitled to command and control a partner to comply with what is considered normal to do in a relationship." So as you're turning toward yourself and figuring out what it is you need, I don't want that to be bids of control for like on the other person. I want this to be really about what do you need for yourself? Staying hydrated, getting sleep, talking to a friend. So it's not about manipulating the other person or controlling the other person so much as it is about turning towards yourself. Okay, so how do we have a dignified parting? One of the things is people will often do, it's called escalating to quit, where they will agitate a situation, escalate a situation to the point where it eventually explodes. And there's this kind of like, I'm fucking done energy to it. But it's in the moment, right? And then after the moment's passed, you go, oh, I'm so sorry, babe. Like I said things that I didn't mean. Now that I've cooled off, I've remembered how much I love you and appreciate you. So if you actually want to transition with somebody, that's probably also going to bubble up in calm, centered moments, not just in the middle of a fight, not just when you're feeling pissed off at your partner. But if you want to break up with them today, and then tomorrow you're like, yeah, that still feels true, I trust that more, although I want to also acknowledge that there's going to be some confusion in that because it's not black or white, right? Like if I'm saying, I want you to be able to leave before all the love is gone, before terrible things have happened, if I want you to be able to leave where there's still love and there's still care and there's still connection, there's still goodwill, then you actually need to be able to leave while there is probably still a little bit of confusion in your body. Like you might have clarity that something needs to shift, but it might be confusing because you still care and you still want this person in your life in some way. So it doesn't need to be like, I'm completely done. I don't want to have anything to do with this person again. But again, it will show up in those kind of quieter, calmer moments and not just in the middle of a fight. And then when I'm having a dignified, when I'm guiding people through a dignified parting, I'll have them come up with some kind of contract at the end. Like, okay, during the first month of us parting from each other, what happens if we bump into each other at the grocery store? How are we going to navigate any of the mutual friendships that we have? And then this is going to bring me around to contact and how much contact you should have with somebody that you just broke up with. I am a huge fan of a period of no contact where you are not checking your phone to see if they texted you, where you're getting that kind of missing, hearing their voice and having their body laying next to you in bed. You're getting that out of your bones and you're getting that out of your blood so that you can remember what it's like to be by yourself and not with this person anymore. And again, I'm not trying to eradicate them from your heart or from your mind. I'm just trying to give you some space so that you're not in this habituated cycle with them anymore, where you're just used to being partnered, and in order to try to like manage the grief of that, you have to keep reaching out. I'm saying figure out a period of time. For me, it's about a month where you're not texting each other, you're not calling each other, you're not hanging out with each other. Because here's the thing, if there's love, if there's a relationship that's worth sustaining in some way, like again, maybe the intimacy or the romance or the sex is off the table in some way, but there's something else that's worth sustaining, it's still going to be there after a month. It's still going to be there after 3 months. It's still going to be there maybe after 6 months. I don't know. It depends, right? Depends on your attention span and what else is going on in your life. But if you love somebody, there's no urgency. You don't need to fix this right now. You don't need to heal from it right away. You don't need to shift immediately into friendship when that's not really the experience that you're having. When the experience that you're having is this one of deep grief that it's a mini death, right? You've lost something, like something has ended. And giving yourself time to have an ending is really important. Being able to recognize that something has stopped. Again, it's just really important for the brain to go, oh, this has changed, and I'm going to mark that this has changed in some way. Having a period of no contact can be really helpful. And then during that process, you're going to want to have your grief practice, right? Your self-soothing practices. So for me, I have a breakup playlist that I listen to. I've got my queer platonic life partner will bring me those like little squeezy snacks. It's like baby food pouches, right? Because my appetite tends to go away when I'm really sad. So I can just like suck on a chia seed pack so that I'm still getting nutrition, right? Like it might be hard to eat, or your eating habits might change one direction or the other, right? But just recognizing like, what are the things that you need to do that are nourishing and self-soothing? Play your favorite movies, get extra rest. Like I said, highly recommend my personal practice. No, I'm not going to tell anybody else to do this, but this is what I like to do. Pop a weed gummy, go lay down in the backyard, face full in the sun, and just soak up the rays and let some of the sadness burn out of me a little bit, right? Like that's super helpful. It's helpful to have some bare skin on the ground. You can decide how much. And then what kind of support you need. And again, I don't want you turning towards and for the sake of this conversation, we'll say ex. I don't want you turning towards your ex because I want you to have that break so you can remember who you are without them. But that doesn't mean don't get support. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, your therapist, your counselors, your coaches, so that you are still getting the support that you need through all of that. Then after the space, and when I say after the space, like again, this is going to be unique to you so that you get to remember who you are outside of the relationship and all of those pieces of yourself that you've been compromising, like you've pulled them back to yourself. You've started to gather them back to yourself so that you get to be who you want to be again. After all of that, then you get to decide what to add back in, right? And my teacher, Nancy Shanto, talks about this in terms of Venn diagrams where this is everything I want to do with you. This is everything you want to do. And then that area that overlaps in the center, that's our relationship now, right? So like I said, maybe sex is off the table, but we can still go get chais. That would be something that would be reasonable. Or, whatever your personal preference is, whatever feels good for you. But start adding that stuff back in. So rather than just like taking one piece away and then leaving everything else, what I would want you to do is instead of taking that one piece and leaving everything else, just pause everything for a minute and then start adding the things back in that work for you. Yeah. Okay, that was a lot. This topic is heavy. You might want to put your hand over your heart or somewhere else on your body. Tune into your breathing. If you're going through a transition or a breakup right now, my heart is with you. Maybe just listening to this podcast was challenging. Maybe you're going through something that's really challenging, but take care of yourselves. Drink water. Get lots of rest. Eat all the delicious food. Or don't. Whatever you need. If you want more information, you can check me out on Instagram at Be The Radical Way and go to trendswithbenefits.com to check out all of our written work on psychedelics, well-being, and the human experience. Thanks for listening.